Welcome back everyone, it's Eric from Briones, and today we're going to be switching things up with a different type of video, focusing in on a new card that we're going to be getting in Sword and Shield. So even though we have our normal Sword and Shield set review, deck profiles, etc. all coming up on the channel, I wanted to do a video about one card in particular from the new Sword and Shield set that I believe will have pretty far-reaching effects, and that's going to be Quick Ball. Of course, we're still going to be talking about it in our set review, but I think what this card enables is really exciting for the game, and I wanted to go much more in depth than we normally would have the time to do in our set review, given just how many different cards we're normally tasked with covering in our set reviews. So real quick, if you guys aren't too familiar with what Quick Ball does, let's quickly go over it. So Quick Ball is a new item card that we're going to be getting in the upcoming Sword and Shield set. And it says you must discard one card from your hand in order to play this card, search your deck for a basic Pokemon, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. So I think at a glance, I think to some, this card might look, pretty solid, but yet maybe a little too straightforward to have an entire video dedicated to it. However, basic searching options in the current format are at the worst they've probably been in years, thanks in part to this past year's rotation, eliminating Tapu Lele GX to find supporters like Professor Elm's Lecture, Pokemon Fan Club, etc. But also more importantly, we lost Nest Ball and Ultra Ball as well. So the best form of generic basic search we have in the current pre-Sword and Shield format is probably Pokemon Communication. But the big issue with Pokemon Communication is that only works consistently in decks that play close to 20 or so Pokemon. Otherwise, sometimes it can be hard to get consistent use out of it whenever you draw into it. Just think back to all the games you've been playing since this past year's rotation where you've had a communication in hand, but no target to actually put back, or the only target you might have in your hand to put back is another card that you still need for the turn as well. As a result, a lot of decks that have potential just flat out don't see play, specifically because they lack any reliable searching methods to get their Pokemon into play. So today we're going to be going over some of the existing cards that currently do, and more interestingly, do not see play, that Quick Ball looks to really help out going forward. So even though I think you could say Quick Ball generally helps any deck that wants to play it, there's still a few popular archetypes that, despite succeeding right now without the card, will be frothing at the mouth for better search. So for some of the basic Pokemon-oriented decks that we have right now, I think some of the big ones that are going to really want this card are going to be a lot of the fire decks, actually. So think of something like Ability Zard in particular. I mean, yes, we do have Cherish Ball, so you can find your Reshizards and your Dedennes, but it's kind of hard sometimes to actually find your copies of Vulpix, your Jirachis, because even though you do play Pokemon Communication, you're still largely an all-basic deck, and your Pokemon count really isn't that high. So I've noticed a lot of times when I've played Ability Zard where I just don't have a Pokemon to put back, and something like Quick Ball really helps in these situations like I kind of already outlined. Also think about Green's Reshizard. I think this is actually probably an even better example, just because after losing Nest Ball, we actually haven't had a great way at searching out Volcanions. Pokemon Communication is generally a pretty bad card in Green's decks, because most Green's decks are only playing, maybe like 7 Pokemon max. So yet again, Communication just really bad, doesn't really fit in, and only having Cherish Ball and Tag Call in the current format means it's really hard to fish out those single prize Pokemon that you kind of want to be able to get out sometimes. So again, think of it in the case of Green's Reshizard. Now we don't have to just play Cherish Ball. Now you could play maybe even just Quick Ball, or a split of Quick Ball and Cherish Ball, or Tag Call, because now you can actually find your baby Volcanions, and this applies to really any Greens deck going forward, I think. And I think this is also really cool because it allows you to play like one of tech cards that have no abilities that are traditionally kind of hard to search out. So think of something like the Hoopa from Unified Minds, very good tech card against Malamar, but it's just really hard to find if you're a Greens deck. And I can actually speak from experience on this. I played the Greens Blacephalon deck at Worlds this past year. I actually played a Hoopa of my own, and it was frequently very hard to actually find when you needed it, just because of the lack of good basic search. So cards like Hoopa, as an example, I think are going to be able to fit more nicely into these styles of decks. And some of the other basic decks that I think really will be looking for this is going to be a couple of other fire decks. So fire in particular, like I said, really I think will be happy to see this card. But the remaining 2 decks I want to talk about are going to be both Blacephalon and Baby Blacephalon. So even though Blacephalon GX has survived this past year's rotation, one thing I've actually noticed ever since rotation, it's become a lot harder to actually get fire energy in the discard pile, as opposed to maybe a year and a half ago before the rotation when we still had Ultra Ball in the format, and even other random things that saw play in Blacephalon at different points like Sightseer and Sophocles. So Quick Ball is now going to allow you a way to more easily get your fire energy into the discard and get set up a little bit quicker in the process. But I think the deck out of these two that really gets a much bigger boost is going to be Baby Cephalon. I think it's actually one of the decks that was really strong pre-rotation that got hurt very badly from the rotation. And one big reason for that is because we did lose Nest Ball, as simple as that seems. Granted, Baby Cephalon did lose a couple of other important things in the rotation as well, but I think Nest Ball was a pretty big one. And now that we have Quick Ball, I think the Baby Cephalon deck might be in a better spot. We've seen people attempt to kind of rejuvenate it to varying degrees of success. We've even posted a Baby Cephalon video on the channel not too long ago as well. But Quick Ball, like I said, I think really going to give a big boost to that deck if it does want to continue to see play going forward as well. Getting into some of the stage 1 decks, I think one of the biggest ones that's immediately going to come to mind for people is going to be Malamar. Malamar is actually one of the few decks I think that didn't get hurt too drastically by the loss of Nest in Ultra Ball. But nevertheless, Quick Ball is a very nice addition to the deck going forward. Just another reliable way at getting energy in the discard pile and getting those Inkeys and Jirashis set up as quickly as possible in the early portions of the game. So another energy manipulating stage 1 deck that I think looks to get a boost from this is going to be Quagnag. It's amazed me how well Quagnag has actually kind of held on despite the absolutely abysmal searching options that we've had recently. But Quick Ball, just a very nice addition yet again. And one of the big things, it's another way you can actually get energy in the discard pile to abuse with your Naganadels. That's a big thing we really haven't had in this format. Now, granted, with Frostmoth coming out on the horizon, Lapras VMAX, etc., I'm not sure what the go-to sort of water stage 1 support Pokemon is going to be, but nevertheless, if this is a deck that is near and dear to you and you want to continue playing it, Quick Ball is definitely going to give it a huge boost and allow you to get your Pokemon more easily set up. And the remaining stage 1 deck that we currently have is going to be Dark Box. You know, Dark Box, outside of Pokemon communication, really hasn't had a great way at finding those Sneasels or your Ditto Prism Star, you know, on the first turn of the game. And Quick Ball really going to give it a boost, especially if we still see the deck play Naganadel going forward. Of course, Quick Ball is going to do great things for getting those energies into the discard as well, in addition to being able to grab your GXs and stuff like that as well. But finally being able to search out Sneasel is going to be, I think, really, really big for this deck without having to rely on Pokemon communication. Since communication, like I said, it really only works best in decks that play a very thick Pokemon count. And Dark Box, it plays kind of, I think, an average amount of Pokemon usually. So I know even in my experience playing Dark Box, I've had a lot of hands where it's like, have communication, but no Pokemon to put back in deck. And this is definitely going to give those types of decks a boost, since the other searching options that already exist can find all of the other pieces pretty efficiently already. And the one stage 2 deck right now that has seen some degree of play, most notably back at Worlds this past year, is going to be the Fire Chandelure deck. So this one's a bit of a stretch saying that this is a deck that is somewhat relevant, but like I said, it did see some play at Worlds, so I think there's precedent to talk about this. And you know, I'm a big fan of Chandelure as a Pokemon. I've messed around with the Chandelure deck. We did a video on it a couple months ago now, but you know, one of the issues I did run into with the deck is you get benched out sometimes just because there's really not good basic search. And if you have a lone Litwick and you don't have another Pokemon to communication back into your deck, you do get benched out, and it is an issue for the deck, I would definitely say. So Quick Ball will help this as well. And as you guys can tell, I think a lot of the fire decks in particular really just want this because they've had such abysmal searching options up until this point so far. So as you guys can tell, there's definitely a few decks lingering around the current meta that want Quick Ball, but I think where things get much more exciting is when we look at all the cards who don't even have a chance at competing due to the lack of adequate searching options. And that's what we're going to look at next. This will include both decks that haven't ever really seen play, but also decks that were previously strong that kind of got neutered whenever we lost Nest Ball and Ultra Ball as well. So I think the one deck that was previously actually very dominant that just completely fell off the map after rotation was Zapdos. Zapdos was, you know, one of the most widely played decks ever since it came out. Even though the deck did lose cards like Choice Band to help fix some of its math, I think really what just absolutely tore this deck apart was the loss of Guzma and of course the ball cards like Nest Ball and Ultra Ball. Now granted, as we've seen with decks like ADP making a big mark on the metagame and even bigger Pokemon coming out with Pokemon VMAX, it'll be interesting to see if Zapdos' damage output will be able to stack up to some of the HP of Pokemon that we're seeing now. But even still, Zapdos definitely has the potential now to not just have to be binder fodder anymore. So there's not really too many stage 1 decks I could think of that were previously good that look to really get a boost from this, but there's actually quite a bit of Stage 2 decks that have seen some degree of play that I think get a huge boost from this. One of the big ones, one of my personal favorites, that's going to be the Team Up Charizard. I've always been a big fan of this card, and it did actually see some degree of play back when Team Up came out. It did have a couple of top 32 and top 64 placements at a couple of major events, and hasn't really done much since, especially, again, since we did lose some of its basic searching options that previously existed. But now with Quick Ball, and even some of the other new cards coming out in Sword and Shield, Charizard actually has an engine that can set itself up now. Speaking of Gen 1 stars, we also had a Blastoise deck pop up for a little bit during the Unbroken Bonds format. We saw with Blastoise and Blastoise GX. But unfortunately, Water is another one of those types that really did get hurt bad by the rotation. We don't have Mysterious Treasure, Netball, or anything similar for that type either. And losing Nest Ball alone, I think, was enough to really just put a dent into the viability of a deck like that. But again, with Quick Ball back in the format, I think people can potentially take another look at Blastoise. So the last Stage 2 deck, or I guess decks, I think we might want to consider revisiting are going to be the Meganium variants. So for a while there, Meganium was actually kind of popping up at tournaments. I think the first time we really saw Meganium kind of break out was with the Greninja GX variant. But then we also went on to see other decks like Nidoqueen pop up as well. And all of these were largely based around an insanely high count of all of the different ball search cards. We saw Communication, Great Ball, Ultra Ball, Nest Ball, all sorts of things, and unfortunately the rotation really eliminated most of these searching options that the different Meganium variants needed. And now we're getting not only Quick Ball to kind of replace Nest Ball, but we're also getting Great Ball and Evolution Incense coming out in the same Sword and Shield set. I think people can now look back to Meganium and maybe give these decks another shot, because they still have a lot of the other core pieces they need to survive. We still have triple acceleration energy to attack with Nidoqueens. We still have the super boost energy to attack with Greninja GX if we wanted to do that. So I think by and large, most of the other pieces for these decks are still intact. And it was just really the ball search cards that we were missing to search out all of our pre-evolutions. So the final batch of decks I want to talk about are ones that have really just never seen any play, partially because of the searching options that we have, or haven't had, I guess we should say. So in terms of basic attacking decks, I think there's two main cards that really come to mind for me. The first one's going to be Hitmonchan. So Hitmonchan, despite actually seeing a good bit of play in the expanded format, has really just not been very good in standard. There's a variety of reasons for that, but especially right now in the current format, we haven't really had any great way at searching out your attackers. But actually with Quick Ball coming into the mix, and also a new card that I believe tentatively is called Air Balloon, you now actually have a way to search out your attackers and retreat a lot of the best wall Pokemon in the format. So Sword and Shield in general looks to give Hitmonchan a little bit of a boost. Now, of course, we don't have Choice Band in the mix, or some of the really strong damage modifiers that Expanded gives us. But nevertheless, Hitmonchan I think is finally starting to come together as a card that potentially can still exist though in the standard format as well. So there's another fighting basic that I think is really going to be eyeing on Quick Ball, and that's going to be Zygarde. So back when GG End was first revealed, one of the Japanese sets that was part of our eventual Unified Mind set was a baby Zygarde. And a lot of people, I think, were saying that this was one of the better cards that came out in GGN that looked to be in our Unified Mindset. But of course, you have to remember we had the early rotation this past year, and a lot of the Unified Minds cards that came out never really got to, I think, see some of their full potential, because we had this early rotation before these cards were actually legal for play, unlike Japan, where they had some of these cards, a couple months before the rotation before Worlds. Zygarde, I think, really would want a card like this just because it's reliant on accelerating energy out of discard pile and also swarming a bunch of different Zygardes in play at once, including Zygarde GX, which by extension will have to kind of be mentioned here. Fighting Pokemon just really have not had any great searching options, especially for a deck that wants to swarm a variety of attackers. We really just have not had the ability to do so effectively, and now we do. I'm actually really excited to take another look at Zygarde. This was one of my personal favorite cards from GGN before the rotation, and I was kind of sad I never had a chance to try this card out when it still had a lot of the pieces it needed to succeed. So now that we have Quick Ball coming into the mix, I'm really excited to take another look at this card. This is definitely towards the top of my list in terms of older cards I really want to mess around with. So looking at a lot of the Stage 1 cards that are excited for Quick Ball, I think almost all of them are going to be actually pretty recent cards. A lot of which come from the most recent set, Cosmic Eclipse. The first one's going to be Alolan Ninetales. Alolan Ninetales is, I think, a solid Pokemon, attacking for 0 energy. Hitting one of the most popular Pokemon in format right now for weakness, definitely a good thing in and of itself. But the issue, of course, with Alolan Ninetales, very hard to actually search out its pre-evolutions and start swarming them into play. So Quick Ball not only is going to help with that, but also it can help get tool cards in the discard, since that is how you are going to be doing damage with the card. So I'm excited to take another look at Alolan Ninetales now. Another Alolan Pokemon that we actually just got is Alolan Persian GX. This is a card that I think has a lot going for it. Has a strong ability, has access to red and blue to get set up, but unfortunately it doesn't have access to good supporters to even get its basic Alolan Meowth into play. I think that's one of the big issues with Alolan Persian, in addition to a couple of other things, admittedly. But I think one of the big things is that it just doesn't even have an engine to get set up right now, which is one of its big challenges. Two other Pokemon GX that we got from Cosmic Eclipse I think also kind of fall into this same category, and that's going to be Silvally GX and Volcarona GX. Volcarona in particular is another card that you want to swarm a bunch of in play to really start amplifying your damage output, but with having no reliable search for fire Pokemon, it's been very challenging up until this point. I've logged a lot of games in with both Silvally GX and Volcarona GX, and I'm pretty confident saying that I think the best setup options we have right now are actually Pokemon Fan Club for that particular deck. And that's really not too good. If your best way of getting set up is Pokemon Fan Club in the current format, you're probably not positioned well for success. So Silvally GX, another one of these types of cards, and also Quick Ball, very good because you can actually play down your hand a little bit easier to draw more cards with Silvally GX. You know, Professor Elm's Lecture doesn't work with either of these Pokemon's pre-evolutions. Professor Oak's setup doesn't work that well with these cards because in the case of Silvally, Ditto and Type Null are both on the same type, so you actually can't grab multiple ways of evolving into a Silvally with it. And Pokemon Fan Club, of course, is limited to only 2 Pokemon. So yeah, I think both these cards in particular really will be looking to abuse this. Another Pokemon that we actually did cover a little bit on the channel is going to be Excadrill. So Excadrill, I think, is actually one of the few instances here where the recent Professor Oak supporter can help. I think Quick Ball a lot of times is just going to be a little bit more consistent and might actually allow you to play Clay instead of its current suite of supporters that I think it has to run instead. So Quick Ball, definitely good for a deck like that. And though this isn't an entire deck, one of the cards I'm actually most excited for to try out now is going to be Magneton. Magneton, I think, is actually a phenomenal card that we just got in Cosmic Eclipse, and I think is actually really under the radar right now. This is a card I would maybe even commit to saying, if you don't own this, I would actually consider picking these up now, because now that we have ways at searching out Magnemites and Magnetons, I think this card actually might become substantially stronger. So I would actually say pick a couple of these up to be on the safe side for the moment while they're still cheap, just in case Magneton does start to catch on. But Magneton, of course, you knock it out with its ability, and you get to grab 3 supporters out of your deck. So you can grab Surge, plus 2 other supporters, or maybe the Hat Lady supporters if you want to go that route. So Magneton, I think, really works well with like Green's decks, specifically tag team decks, just because much like with the Mismagius we've seen be played with some of the tag teams, Magneton fills a similar role in that regard. And the effective is just so insane just to grab Surge plus 2 very strong other supporters to play in addition to that. So I think Magneton definitely will have potential going forward. I'm really excited yet again about this card as well. And of course, we do have some Stage 2 Pokemon that I'm also kind of looking forward to trying out. First of which is going to be another new card that we got from Cosmic Eclipse, and that's going to be Empoleon. I think Empoleon actually has a lot going for it. It's a fantastic type. It has good pre-evolutions. You can copy the attacks of both of them, both of which are solid. It only gives up 1 prize. It attacks for a low amount of energy, but it has no way to get set up. Out of all of the interesting, like, 1 prize attackers we got from Cosmic Eclipse, Empoleon was definitely one of the ones who had the most squandered potential just due to the lack of methods to get it set up. So will Empoleon see play post Sword and Shield? It's hard to say, but definitely the card gets a pretty big boost going forward now that you can actually search out Piplups finally. Yet again, another new card from Cosmic Eclipse is Flygon Gx. This is another one of those cards that I actually did my best to try to break and make playable. But again, just with Fighting's terrible searching options right now, I really don't think Flygon had a lot of chance to really succeed. Especially most of the types of builds people were kind of looking at with Flygon were with Silvally GX. And as I kind of mentioned with Silvally GX, there's really not any great searching options, even in terms of the supporter-based options. Fan Club's probably the best, but that's only going to grab you 2 Pokemon. So now with Quick Ball in the mix, Flygon I think definitely deserves another look at yet again, just because even though it's a Stage 2, Fighting does have a good bit of support, and it can one-shot pretty much any tag team in the format. Now granted, it probably won't knock out VMAX Pokemon, but it will be able to knock out Pokemon V going forward as well. Another fighting stage 2 that didn't have a chance to succeed was actually the Garchomp back from Unified Minds. Really not a bad card at a glance, has a solid ability to increase its damage output, has a free retreat cost, has a lot of support in the form of Martial Arts Dojo and Karate Belt. Its pre-evolutions are also solid, only gives up 1 prize, but yet again, here we are, and no good searching options, so Garchomp definitely going to have to be a card we reconsider. Now granted, I think Fighting Week Pokemon haven't been as relevant ever since Garchomp first came out. Pikarom lately has kind of taken a dip in terms of play, but with a couple of new VMAX Pokemon coming out that are weak to fighting, maybe Garchomp will be able to be a more serious contender as a 1 prize deck. And the last Pokemon we're going to look at is going to be Porygon Z. Porygon Z is one of the most interesting abilities I think in the game right now. Being able to accelerate any special energy in play gives Porygon Z a lot of flexibility in terms of how you want to build around this. You can play this with a bunch of the new Aurora Energy, Rainbow Energy, Unit Energy, whatever it might be, to get a wide variety of different attackers set up. Now, of course, again, the big issue is there's not a great way at searching out Porygons and maybe even some of the other attackers you might want to play alongside Porygon Z. So think of Whimsicott as an example that some people have messed with before. Not really a great way at searching out Cottonies. So with Quick Ball and Evolution Insets coming out in the same set, Porygon Z I think definitely deserves another look yet again. So as you guys can see, we have a lot of cards that currently exist that have been in dire need of good basic searching options for some time, and I'm very excited to give another look at some of these otherwise solid cards. So on a personal level, I think some of the cards I'm excited to maybe take another look at are going to be the Stage 2 Charizard back from Team Up, Magneton, and also some of the Evolution GXs we just got in Cosmic Eclipse, like Alolan Persian, Silvally, Volcarona, and Flygon as well. But of course, guys, we went over a lot of cards here. Which ones are you guys excited about getting another chance of being competitive thanks to Quick Ball? And also, are there any cards that I may have missed when combing through the card pool? Definitely sound off below in the comment section. Let us know what you're thinking. What cards are you excited about to use with this new searching option that we're going to be getting in Sword and Shield? So if you guys want to hear my thoughts on some of our other Sword and Shield cards, I did post a first impressions video. I have a link to that down below in the description. And of course, definitely keep your eyes peeled to the channel as we do have our full suite of Sword and Shield content coming up in a couple of weeks as well. But if you guys did enjoy this video today, feel free to like and subscribe and consider supporting this channel by becoming a patron over at patreon.com/rarecandytcg or by picking up some merch from our online store, rarecandytcg.com. It would mean a lot. But as always, guys, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.